Purcell has spent much of her life in a battle with anorexia. Hospitalised 10 times, including 7 months at a residential clinic in Perth. She has since navigated a diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder, survived a psychotic episode, written 2 books, and built a life that she genuinely loves. But this is not a neat before and after story. Kate is still navigating an eating disorder diagnosis right now, alongside medication that makes it harder, not easier. What makes Kate remarkable isn't that she has recovered and moved on. It's that she keeps choosing herself anyway and choosing to help others so that they don't experience the pain that she has had to struggle with. Let's get to the podcast.
Hi, I'm Danielle, and I'm so glad that you're here because together we're going to work through big stuff. Hello and welcome to Big Stuff.
Hi, thank you for having me.
That's an absolute pleasure. I'm looking forward to digging into your story today because I too have experience with a long-term eating disorder. I had bulimia for 11 years, and while I have spoken about it previously, I haven't spoken about it for a really long time. I think I talked about it more when I was a journalist than I have as a coach.
Okay.
Only, I don't know why exactly, but it hasn't really been a thing. But and we'll get into your story, but how when it has been a thing, it kind of is always a bit of a monster under the bed, like it can be.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to go back though to kind of the beginning and find out more about little Kate and growing up with a twin brother. And what was life like for you before?
Challenging. When I think about my childhood, I was very lucky. I had amazing parents and an amazing family, but the dynamic between myself and my twin brother was challenging because he was extraordinarily, and he still is to this day, extraordinarily charismatic, funny, very out there, loud, extroverted, just made friends at the drop of a hat. He didn't need to try. Everyone loved him. I was sort of, a bit opposite to that. So I was more introverted and I was more quiet and I internalized everything. I actually thought that I was pretty worthless because I wasn't like him. I thought that I should have been like him, but I wasn't. So therefore I was worthless. So I didn't have very good self-esteem, particularly from maybe the ages of even 8 upwards. So I remember maybe year 1, 2, 3 wasn't too bad. Come year 4, I started having issues with the way I looked, but also my brother kept on his charisma and his humor in year 4 was where it really started to pick up. So, and his popularity and things like that. So I was comparing myself to him come year 4.
So nobody was anybody sort of saying anything to make you feel like he was all that and a bag of chips and you weren't? Or was it simply observing how he moved through the world?
100%. It wasn't, no one ever said to me, you're crap because you're not like him. It was just my own perception.
Isn't it wild that sort of year 4, we're looking at 9, 10 years old, that we can...
I was already struggling.
Yeah, that we can be creating this internal landscape of comparison and not measuring up to someone even that you love.
Yeah, I love my brother. I absolutely adore him, but it's just the dynamic that was there. I really struggled with it.
And so when did things start? When did you sort of start turning to like control, or like when did that self-worth really get out of? Yeah.
So I will say that maybe come year 6, I sort of started to have a little bit of puppy fat. It was nothing too great, just normal getting older as a child. But the funny thing was my brother was actually overweight, but he didn't care. He didn't care. He was so popular and funny and loud, and he didn't give a crap about what he looked like. But having said that, I was extraordinarily, I just internalized all the pain. And yeah, so year 6 started getting a bit of puppy fat. Year 7, I started dieting, and it wasn't anything too extreme, but I remember my mum was on Weight Watchers. So she never, there was no talk from my family about my weight or puppy fat or dieting. My mum was relatively neutral about the fact that I started to look into Weight Watchers, just like getting into her Weight Watchers recipe books and looking at fat grams and things like that. She didn't see it as a huge issue, and it probably wasn't too much of an issue at that point. Year 7, starting to lose a little bit of weight, but only to a point where I was still healthy. It certainly felt a little bit better because I'd lost a little bit of weight. But then come year 8, didn't put that weight back on, but I was still, still sort of carrying a little bit of puppy fat, but not that much. But what happened in year 8 was what put me on the path to anorexia. Just FYI, I had surgery on my hand. If you're looking at the hand,
Looks impressive.
Blasted up.
Yeah, looks impressive. Does it hurt?
No.
Okay.
No pain.
All right.
No
Good. All right.
Yeah, year 8, so there was a bit of teasing. Actually, there was some teasing in year 7 as well, which actually sort of brought the dieting stuff up a little bit more in year 7, but there was more teasing in year 8. And a lot of that was to do with my brother, actually, because my brother was overweight, and people would give me crap about the fact that my brother was overweight and made me feel like I was overweight. So I had these issues come up, and then I had a rejection from one of the boys that I liked at the end of year 8. And I remember making that decision, 100% made that decision. I want to be thin, but I don't care about anything else. I just want to be thin, because maybe if I'm thin, people will like me. And maybe if I'm thin, boys will like me. That's what I thought. I came to that conclusion. So at the end of year 8, Christmas holidays, year 8, I, rather than enjoy the Christmas fair and everything, I kind of took things really seriously in terms of dieting. And I made the decision I didn't want to gain weight over Christmas. I wanted to lose weight. So that's where it started. And then year 9, it sort of kept going. I started getting more focused on weight loss, and I wasn't overly popular. I had a handful of good friends, but that year 9, I hated school. Even though my brother loved it because he was so popular, I wasn't overly popular. So I had all these issues, and then just focusing on the control of what I was eating and things like that. And then the same thing happened at the end of year 9 for the school holidays. I made a decision, okay, I don't want to put on weight. Like normally you might put on some weight over Christmas and your holidays and stuff. But I just made that decision. I'm going to restrict even more. So I did. And come year 10, that was when things got really bad.
So this is over a couple of years that you were becoming more and more restrictive. Were people noticing? Had anyone said anything? Or were people even saying like that you look great, which is, I think, also problematic, isn't it? Because it just reinforces behavior.
I don't think there was anything said until year 9. So year 8, I didn't really diet so much in year 8. There was the dieting in year 7. There wasn't so much dieting in year 8. But until the end of the year, like I said, when I was rejected by this boy and then made that decision to lose weight, like even more weight.
Were people commenting on the weight loss? Therefore, even saying that you look good.
So I don't think people really said I look good as such. But my mum and dad definitely started to get concerned in year 9.
Yeah.
My mum got me along to see a GP, a female GP that she had seen, and she was weighing me, and she was helping me, or trying to help me navigate what I was eating, try and make sure I didn't skip lunch and, do all these sorts of things. So yeah, that was, I got concern from mum and dad. And then by the time it was the end of year 9, struggling to try and lose more weight over that holiday period, that's when they got really concerned. And I started to look underweight. So people were concerned.
Yeah. And so you said that things got really bad in year 10. Tell me what happened in year 10.
So I remember, and again, I still hated school. I hated it. Absolutely hated it. But yeah, what happened in year 10 was I remember, and this is all written in my first book, I asked my mum if I could be a vegetarian, which was really just a ploy to lose more weight because I didn't want to eat meat. I didn't want to eat much at dinner at all. So I asked to be a vegetarian. She said, I'll think about it. If you go to this assessment at Princess Margaret Hospital, we're concerned about you. So you come along to this assessment and I'll think about the vegetarianism. So that was the deal. And of course, I actually sort of said, yeah, because I got out of school and no issue there. I'll go and have an assessment. I don't think anything will happen. But yeah, I went there and was promptly diagnosed with anorexia nervosa. Told that if I lost more weight, I'd have to go to hospital. I was like, okay, they asked me to see a dietitian. I was like, no, I'm going to do it myself. And I think I saw a psychologist a couple of times and yeah, the medical team had a look over me and I was, quite underweight. But yeah, if you lose more weight, you'll go into hospital. So what happened? 2 weeks later, another appointment, lost weight in hospital. And that was the beginning of 2 years of hospital.
Did you know what anorexia nervosa was at the beginning? No.
I didn't even know when I went for this assessment that was on the table. Like I didn't know that was something that people were thinking. And I didn't certainly think that either. I just thought, I just want to be thin, But all the psychological testing and the medical testing and everything just screamed out.
Neon signs. We've got an eating disorder.
Right.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you heard the words anorexia, how did it make you feel?
I actually struggle to remember how I felt about that. I think, and I say this in the book, it was all a blur. The whole experience was a blur. I don't remember really how it all felt. I think I was just a little bit in shock, like why is this happening sort of thing. And then when I was admitted to hospital, I remember that first night I was, oh shit, they want me to stay here for a minimum of 2 weeks and gain weight. And I was just thrust into this world of cold clinical world full of doctors and nurses and scales and nasal gastric tubes and the whole works. So yeah, it all happened very quickly.
Was it frightening to be in that environment, away from your family and away from...
Yes, was. My parents visited me daily, but I was scared. And I also got to meet a whole other bunch of girls that were in there for the same reason. And I kept on comparing myself to them and saying, I'm not thin enough and they're thinner than me and I don't even need to be here and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, that was the beginning of all of that. And really, funnily enough, I was sort of happy because I didn't have to go to school. So there was this silver lining. I was like, yeah, at least I have to go to school. But yeah, it wasn't fun. And soon what happened after that was that the eating disorder of anorexia really took hold of me and wouldn't let go. And I basically got to the point where I was like, actually, I'm not in control anymore. I've got this anorexia beast thing this demon inside of me that's taking control. So it was a scary thing. Yeah.
So you don't feel like the beast, as you called it, had control over you prior to going into hospital? Or is it your awareness of it?
I was more aware of it. I don't think I was really aware of it, during year 9 and things like that.
Mm.
I wasn't aware that there was an eating disorder that was taking control. I thought I was in control because I was like, yep, I'm going to restrict my diet and I'm going to lose weight. I felt like I had control over something, which is, I didn't feel like I had control over anything else in my life, like school and, my relationships with family and friends and, all school stuff. I didn't have any control. So this was my last-ditch effort to actually get some control. And I did, but that soon turned on its head, and I kind of realized, oh, shit. Not straight away when I went to hospital. It took some time. But eventually I got to the point where I was actually, hard to explain, but it wasn't even an option to start eating again.
Yeah.
It was the fear of weight gain and the obsession with being thin, and it just grabbed a hold of me.
So they put you into hospital with, nasal feeding tubes. They put you into hospital with the view to help you to get to a healthy weight so that you can go home. And from my understanding of that, that is it's also a mortal fear, right? They're about to force feed you away from your ultimate goal of whatever. And that's when this beast really sort of rears its head. So how was
100%.
that process for you, the refeeding and
Scary, traumatizing? Because when you think about it, this anorexia beast demon thing that's inside of you just wants you to be thin. And putting on weight is incredibly traumatic. Even though I was extraordinarily underweight, whenever I put on half kilo or a kilo or whatever it might be, and in the space of 2 to 4 weeks I'd put on 7 or 8 kilos, it was traumatic. Even though I was still the weight they wanted me to get to was still ridiculously low. But you couldn't see that. You couldn't. You just saw all the weight gain and you felt obese. And you were literally starving and, at a weight where you just, I remember my dad saying I look like a cancer patient, I remember him very well saying.
And what did you see when you looked in the mirror?
Not what I desired. I wanted to be thinner, and that's all I cared about. And that's why I say, it's the anorexia grabs a hold of you, because it's not about being slim and healthy. It's about being ridiculously thin, and you just don't want to stop. And then going to hospital, you get thrust into this situation where you're having to gain weight, and it's just traumatic. I remember feeling so crappy about the way I looked, because you're just conscious of this weight gain that happens, regardless of how thin you actually are.
You're just aware of the thing that's your mortal fear.
It is the mortal fear. With anorexia, the clear thing is being obsessed with being thin and being completely overly petrified of putting on weight, and then you're forced to do so.
What was the therapy? What was the therapy like in hospital?
Well, it was Princess Margaret Hospital, which is the medical hospital, obviously. So it's not a psych hospital. Although they did have an eating disorders program, so you did have a case manager that you saw every so often, and mine was a lovely psychologist, Julie, and we sat and tried to look at maybe the reasons for why I went down this path, and tried to kind of analyze the why, and I don't think that really helped. I don't think the psychology that I went through there was helpful. It was a nice experience to have someone to talk to, and having said that, I probably didn't say very much, because I didn't have much to say. I was just so focused on the anorexia. But she was lovely, and I was very lucky to have her, but it didn't help. In the 2 years that I spent 10 admissions at Princess Margaret, I didn't get any better. I got worse, because there's the influence of the other girls who are, I started counting calories, not just fat grams. And that became an obsession, and always comparing yourself to the other girls and thinking you're not thin enough, and seeing what kind of, games they play.
So is it like you hear about, people like small-time offenders go into jail and they meet big-time offenders and they learn new tricks of the trade? Was it
Pretty much.
was it like that? Did you?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
And like I said, I was only concentrating on fat grams. I wasn't at all counting calories until I started my admission to the hospital. And then, it was so many little things he picked up along the way
Right.
that wasn't healthy. So I think the anorexia just got stronger and stronger and stronger as time went on. And my weight continued to drop. So like, I don't know, I don't want to really use numbers, but like, you know, from when I first started off being admitted, I might have been at one point, and go to my last admission number 10, it was 10 kilos less than
So
what
after
I
2
originally
years of
had.
treatment, when you were
I
already
dropped.
so desperately underweight at the beginning, you had lost a further 10 kilos.
Yes.
Did anybody talk to you about the dangers of your organs shutting down?
Yes.
And that nothing, didn't care?
No.
Wow.
No, I didn't care. I remember, you know, I'd get to the point when I went home, I would stop eating and then I stopped drinking water because I wanted to lose as much weight as possible before my next appointment. And then I was getting to the point where I was, they had to give me like apart from glucolect, which is basically something that you have to drink to up your electrolytes, they also had to give me like a heat blanket and all this sort of stuff, this sort of silver heat blanket to put over you because I was literally shivering because it was the middle of winter and I had no weight on me. So, you know, and then I'd have all these medical appointments where they'd, you know, my puberty was going backwards. I didn't have a period. I had no breasts. I had no curves. I went backwards in puberty, and that was a big problem for them. And that's why they were like, yeah, we have to admit you into hospital because you need to gain weight. But that's not going to help. Just gaining the weight doesn't cure anything. It doesn't help anything. I mean, yes, you need to restore the weight because otherwise it's medically unsafe.
Or
But in
it's
terms
making you more balanced for existence, but it's not solving the
Yeah.
problem in your head.
It's not solving the problem in the head. It's not recovery.
Mm.
Gaining weight is not recovery at all.
So what happened after 2 years in treatment and things got worse? By now, you're what, 18?
No, I was 14 when I
Oh, yeah.
started
Okay.
it. So I was 16.
16. Okay.
Right.
Had you dropped out of
And then I-
school or you were still going to school?
I had dropped out of school to a certain extent. I was doing schooling. I had a schoolroom that you go to on this teenage ward in the hospital. So I did do some schoolwork, but I wasn't going to school. Some schoolwork. But then 10th admission came. I'll tell you what happened then. So this was my last admission, and I was moved because most of the eating disorder patients were in the teenage ward, or if not, maybe ward 9, which was another ward in case there wasn't enough beds. But the nurses there were relatively understanding. Teenage ward, they were more understanding. Not great at all, better. And then on my last admission, I was transferred to the surgical ward, where I had nurses that had no idea about eating disorders. And I was so petrified and scared and just so unhappy because they were so awful to me.
Why did they move you to the surgical ward?
Because there wasn't enough beds.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
On the teenage ward. So that happened, and then I ran away from hospital. So I ran away. It was at night. I ran away. I pulled my feeding tube out on the side of the road, and I went to a restaurant that was in Subi right around the corner, and I asked to use their phone and call my brother and his partner because my parents were away at the time. And I asked them to take me home, and they didn't. They had to take me back to hospital, which was heartbreaking. And when my parents came back and found out about all of this, they decided to change tact a bit.
What does changing tact look like? Yeah, what does that look like?
They got me admitted to Hollywood Clinic, which is a psychiatric clinic with an eating disorders program.
And was that...
Which is actually...
Yeah, was that the thing that changed?
Yes, that was the thing that changed. And not straight away. Like I went there July. It would have been November by the time I actually started moving forward, because I was so not ready to go there, because I remember I was petrified. I pushed my mum and dad when they told me. I wasn't violent, but I was sort of very aggro because I knew the girls that went there put on weight and they started to eat normally, and I was not ready for that. So I couldn't stop those. So I went there, but probably for about 4 months, I didn't.
You resisted the program?
I resisted it a bit, yeah. I mean, I didn't talk. I didn't say anything to anyone. I was so quiet. Although I was very lucky that, they were very patient with me. They didn't force, tube me or anything. At that time, they weren't using tube feeding at Hollywood. They do now, but they didn't. And the other girls there were much more positive. They were very, very much into recovery and made me feel a bit better having these amazing girls around me that wanted the best for me and wanted the best for themselves. And the nursing staff were about 1,000 times better than the ones at the medical hospital. They were amazing and patient and sat with me while I tried to eat my sandwiches with butter on them. And, they were just incredible. And I actually would say, because, like I said, maybe the first 3 or 4 months I wasn't doing very well. But then slowly I started to make the decision that, maybe I do want to change. Maybe I can change, and maybe I deserve to change and deserve a good life. And you know what helped me more than anything was the other patients and the nursing staff treated me with kindness and compassion and patience. They helped me to see the good in Kate again. And I had absolutely no idea of any of that stuff prior to that happening. I didn't think I deserved a positive life, a healthy life. I didn't think I could do it, could move forward at all. But these nursing staff and the other patients were just amazing. And even more so than the dietitian and the group therapy, that was all helpful. But the one thing that really helped me was the way
Love.
I was related to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Cared about.
that kindness and love. Yeah. I think that, there's data and information and stuff like that. It's very helpful. It can teach you what you need to know about nutrition and eating well and nourishing your body. But it sounds like it was something in the actual care, being seen, being cared for.
Being seen and heard.
Yeah.
And cared for and having that kindness and compassion and patience. So important. So I started to turn things around, and I was at the hospital at Hollywood Clinic for 7 months in total, which was
completely in-house. Like you lived there for 7 months.
I lived there for 7 months. It was my second home. They don't do that anymore. They push them in and out in 2 months. I wouldn't have gotten better if they hadn't done that to me. They were so patient, and the way that the clinic was back then was, I was very lucky, because I don't think it is the same now. But I eventually turned that corner, and I started recovering and feeling like, maybe I want a life, and what is that going to look like? And I started getting excited for doing things again. Like my friends, the other patients, the girls in there, a couple in particular, we went to Adventure World. I got my tongue pierced. I colored my hair and did all this stuff that's all about self-expression, and sort of I was finding myself and, listening to music again. And we had a plan to go over to the Gold Coast and things like that, which never actually happened, but we actually did some fun stuff.
It's also about
together.
making goals for the future, right? You set the goals for whether they happen or not. It's saying I've got something to live for.
Yes, 100%. So I was very lucky that Hollywood Clinic stay, I turned a corner, but it did take a decent amount of time for me to actually get to the point where I was even considering recovering.
So then when you got out, you made a shift to rave culture and recreational drugs. So there's so much about your story that really resonates with mine. So I started to binge and purge when I moved out of home. So I left home at 16, which I now know in hindsight was very, very young. And I think that binging and purging was my way of controlling in an environment where I didn't feel like I felt a little bit out of my depth. And because, I was studying full-time acting and trying to make money, pay rent, trying to cook for myself, clean. And it was a very big, big world out there. And so I started binging and purging, and I started gaining weight firstly. And then I didn't want to gain weight. So I started binging and purging. And that was a cycle that lasted on and off for 11 years. And it was oftentimes when I was lonely, when I was sad, I would be like, I'm going to fill this void with food, and then I'd feel bad about the food, and then I would purge. And the times that I didn't do that was when I found this rave culture and recreational drugs, because, man, that made me thin, right? Dancing 4 nights a week, all night or whatever. Now, I know, or I feel, and tell me how you feel about this, that really that behavior of like control out of my head, out of my body, didn't go dormant in those periods of recreational drugs. It actually, my sort of addiction shifted to something else. Would you say that your addiction just sort of morphed in those years?
No, I wouldn't say that. I don't think I was at all addicted to the lifestyle as such, or addicted to drugs. It was just, all I can say about that is, it wasn't an addiction. It was just me wanting to experience everything. After having lost most of my teenagehood, I wanted to experience everything. And quite quickly into the piece, after I left Hollywood, I started making friends. I had amazing people in my life, and a lot of them actually sort of started me on to, like a bit of speed and ecstasy and, dexamphetamines and things like that. And I was just like, yeah, bring it on. I love just experiencing things. And the raving, I wasn't addicted to the raving, but it was an amazing experience because I got this culture of love and care and fun. And I missed out on
Acceptance.
fun
I
for
think
so
the raving
long.
culture is a very accepting culture.
Very
Bring all
accepting.
your bring your freak flags. We'll take anyone. There's a lot of
Yeah.
anyone
So
is
it's
welcome.
and so much kindness and so much love. And I had always wanted that in a friendship circle. I wanted that bond and that camaraderie. So I would say that my addiction shifted. I just think I became someone that wanted adventure and new experiences. And I got that. But unfortunately, it was my downfall eventually.
Tell me more about that.
So I started feeling quite socially anxious about, so it was 2001 that I left Hollywood, had a great year, including a bit of drug use and things like that. It was middle of 2002, end of 2002 that things started to go pear-shaped with the drug use, and I wasn't using drugs all the time. It was maybe weekly. Party drugs, I wouldn't say that I was addicted, but anyway, it kind of led to a downfall with bit of, I couldn't say straight away it was only the social anxiety mainly, and then as things moved forward towards the end of 2002, I was experiencing panic attacks, and I was experiencing depression, and I was experiencing even worse social anxiety. And
is this in your come down? So you'd have your fun nights out, and then in the come downs, you were having like deeper and deeper come downs?
I did. Towards the end of 2002, I stopped taking recreational drugs because my come downs were so bad. But having said that, for the first year and a half, the come downs were just like, for anyone, it was unpleasant, but didn't really faze me too much. But by the end of 2002, my come downs were bad, and then it would last all week.
Yeah.
So that's when I made the decision to stop using drugs. So, but, so panic attacks, depression, social phobia, I would even go to the point of saying that, being very worried about what people think of me and things like that. And a certain kind of disconnection from my feelings. And that's a very hard thing to explain, but I believe that it was a seed of psychosis that was planted with the drug use. This didn't actually manifest until I was 25. So about 7 years later, 6 or 7 years later.
Interesting that you say that, the seed of psychosis. So something started bubbling underneath through the drug use, and then you stopped the drug use and it kind of eased a bit. But then what happened? Then what happened when you were 25?
I just went fully psychotic, and not this is not the kind of psychotic that people can see. This was just delusional thinking, and that was it, basically. Highly delusional.
What were you
But
thinking?
no one knew.
What was in your head?
This is where it gets a little bit messy. So this was probably the year that I was psychotic and I was undiagnosed for a year was probably the hardest time of my life. And it, the anorexia pales in comparison to this. It was so hard because I thought, for whatever reason, it was bizarre that I'd been forced out of, not that I'm in heaven, but like I thought I'm not a religious person at all, but I felt like I was in hell. I thought literally that I was in hell, and I didn't have that spirit in me anymore. I felt like I was dead, and I had to live with that every day for about a year, and it was scary. It was very, very scary.
Did you try talking to anyone or trying to explain this feeling that you had? Did you just feel it was just too nuts?
It was true. I didn't think I was nuts. I believed it 100%, but I also believed that people wouldn't understand. So I just shut up. I just shut my mouth. I didn't say anything. So I actually ended up going to hospital, but my parents and my doctor and everything thought I was just highly, highly depressed. But I was grieving the loss of a life. I was grieving the loss of my spirituality, and I was scared.
I think of that as a concept now. Now I ask this is a very left field question that's definitely not in my questions here.
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of research and thinking into consciousness and what happens before we live and what happens after we die. And I do believe that we have a higher self who knows all of that. And then we have our earthly self who lives in this dimension. Lives in this dimension, and we're here to get the lessons at Earth School that we need to get in order to ascend, right? That's what I believe.
Yes, I agree.
Do you feel that this psychosis was in any way like some kind of, was it a brain snap where it was just wrong? Everything you were thinking was just completely wrong because you weren't yourself? Or is it possible that you had this understanding of all of that, but your human self didn't know what to do with it?
Gosh, it's hard for me to even answer.
Sorry, it's really left field, I know.
That's a really hard question to answer. I still really can't make a lot of sense about it. All I can say is that it was so real that I never for 1 second thought that I was delusional or psychotic. There was no way that what I was experiencing wasn't real.
Yeah. Well, it was real. It was real for you, whether anyone else was experiencing it as well. It was real for you.
What people saw was just me withdraw completely. I wouldn't leave my bedroom. When I got to hospital, I would just sit in my bed. I would just watch DVDs, and that was all I do. And if I went home when I was in hospital, I would sleep all day and then sit up and watch DVDs all night, and then go back to sleep. And I just had, my life was gone.
Yeah.
And that's why I say I would sometimes end up so crying my eyes out and distressed because I was grieving the loss of my life. I thought it was done. I thought I was done.
So how did you get out of that period? How old are you now?
I'm 41 and I was
okay, this
25
is when you were 25. Yeah. So how did you get out of, so you've had this year of deep questioning whether your soul essence was dead and you were just existing here in hell. How did you get out of that period?
It is miraculous. Absolutely miraculous. So for whatever reason, so I'll tell you a little bit about how things ended up after about 12 months. I was actually living in Pemberton with my girlfriend because I started to see her again. She was very adamant that she wanted me in her life. And even though I was still really struggling, we decided to move down to Pemberton, and I got a job at the pub, and she got a job at the school, and we were living in this beautiful little house in the forest, and she eventually moved in with her soon-to-be husband. So I just had this house to myself. And I started doing things like tarot cards and angel cards, and I do yoga, and I started to do all this spiritual stuff, look into astrology, things that I was always into back in the day. And then all of a sudden it was like I had this epiphany or enlightenment experience, I suppose, where I felt connected to spirit again. And all of a sudden, everything was just amazing. And I felt so connected spiritually. Then I had the 3-month manic episode. That's what happened next.
After you had
So
this spiritual enlightenment, where I was about to say, I wonder if you've like connected back in with your higher self or with your, how did the manic episode go?
It was insane. It was what I needed at the time because life was amazing for about 3 months. I moved back up to Perth. My dad was like, oh my God, Kate's actually happy and seems to have all her shit together. Like my mum was not quite as convinced. She was like, there's something not right here. But for 3 months, I was elated. I would go out and go to Fremantle and have coffee and I don't know, just try and find jobs, but I never actually found one because that was probably for the best because I wouldn't have lasted long.
But we know with manic episodes, right, what goes up
must come down. And I came down hard. I came down hard. After about 2 or 3 months of being manic and very happy and connected spiritually, I started to get a mixed episode, which was depression, severe depression, and anxiety and anger and rage and all this negative stuff, which my parents were just beside themselves. What the hell is going on? And I ended up just, again, isolating, staying in my bed, barely sleeping, but trying to sleep sometimes and just, unhappy and mixed emotions. And then it all led to full-blown schizophrenic symptoms. This was, end of 2009, I became psychotic. I was pretty much psychotic until about the end of 2010. Then I had the manic episode, and then come April 2011, I was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder and hospitalized and medicated.
And did the medication help?
100%.
Okay.
Never look back.
Amazing.
That's what I needed. I needed something, yeah.
So all along there's been this underlying mental health disorder.
Yeah. But it only really manifested, when I was in my mid-20s. And then by the time I was 26, I was diagnosed. I went to Perth Clinic with my psychiatrist. He was lovely. Perth Clinic for 2 weeks, medicated, diagnosed, and sent off. And that was my recovery journey. I haven't been to hospital ever since.
And is that a chemical imbalance that does this and then it does this, basically? So you're always constantly trying to catch up to this chemical imbalance. And now you're on the medication
I was highly chemically imbalanced, and now I'm balanced. So it took me a good maybe a year after I was hospitalized to find exactly the right meds and the right dosage.
Yeah.
But then and that was a hard year. That was a hard year of recovery because I didn't have any hope for my future. But as of things changed in 2012 dramatically. After my meds were sort of stabilized, I started socializing. I started working. I met my ex-fiance. Things started happening and life was good for the first time in a long time.
You say in your books that you found this miracle medication that helped to bring your brain back into a state of balance, which helped you to have the equilibrium to live a normal life, right? Normal,
yes,
but to live a normal life. I'm not saying that you're not normal. I'm just saying who's got a normal life,
right?
Who's got a normal life, but to live the life that you could see for yourself. But there was a side effect of that medication. And what was that?
Weight gain. Yay.
So what happened?
So initially, when I went on the meds, well, the first med was very mild antipsychotic, so it wasn't quite so bad. But then I went on Seroquel, which is a pretty high quality antipsychotic, and the weight gain just started. And at first, it was actually really traumatic, even more traumatic, because I was hungry all the time. I couldn't kind of get rid of this hunger, which apparently happens a lot, but that only didn't happen for very long. It was about 3 months of the hunger stuff. But even so, after that, I was still putting on weight. And then I stopped the Seroquel because I was so mortified that I'd put on weight. And I think I might have been up to a size 10 or 12, but I was a size 6 to 8. So it was a lot. And then I went off the Seroquel, and then I lost a fair bit of that weight, but things weren't good mentally. So eventually...
So you just went off it and didn't put something else back in? No other antipsychotic?
I was still having some meds, but they weren't quite as powerful as the Seroquel.
Sure.
But so eventually I had to go back on the Seroquel. But when I went back on the Seroquel, would have been January in 2012, I didn't have that same hunger experience. So I wasn't eating a great deal. I don't think I was dieting, but I wasn't eating a great deal. 3 meals, that's about it. But I didn't put the weight back on. So I was actually quite small by the time I met my ex-fiance in June. I was quite small still. I'd lost all that weight, and I was still on the Seroquel, and I was still having the good effects from the Seroquel, but I had lost that weight. The only thing then was I still had to navigate that weight gain stuff, because it did eventually kick in again without the excess hunger, but just it makes it very easy to put on weight. It's extremely easy to put on weight and hard to lose. And I ended up trying to navigate that the best I can.
Did that trigger your old monster?
It did to an extent. Because I was with my ex-fiance for 4 years, and after about a year of being with him, I started to put on the weight, but I was very happy in my life because I'd never had such a functional existence. So I had a job in mental health. I was doing public speaking. I had an amazing partner and amazing friends. And I didn't let the weight stuff get to me too much. And eventually I got to a point where I was like, okay, I need to be healthy again, because I did put on 20 kilos, and I needed to get healthy again. I wasn't obsessed with weight loss. It was a healthy, okay, I just want to get back down to being healthy. And I did. And I felt great because I was a size 8. But it's been hard to navigate that moving forward because the weight gain still comes and goes. So what happened, because that was 2015 when I went on Jenny Craig.
Your recall of years is unbelievable. I cannot recall a year. I have to think of how old I was and like what my haircut was. I cannot think of this. Your recall of years is excellent. So you went on Jenny Craig.
I did, because and even my mum was I'm not really happy about this actually, but mum was like, you need to lose some weight, Kate. Because I was getting to up to the 70 kilo mark instead of in the 50s. I was in the 70s. And I was like, okay, yeah, we'll get back down to a healthy level, but I wasn't obsessed. This eating disorder stuff didn't come back around until maybe about 2 or 3 years ago. That was when I started to try because I think I was in the 60 kilos, and I was like, I want to be a little bit less. So I went on a diet, and then my diet just continued and went on this weight loss journey where I lost about 19 kilos. So
did you feel yourself slipping, or you didn't recognize it until you were down the hole?
I think I recognized it slightly, but not as much as I should have. I was consumed by this thing by the end of 2024. So I started this diet in 2023, mid 2023. By the end of 2024, I was well into this. What I know now is atypical anorexia. An eating disorder just started to take hold again.
I stopped the binging and purging cycle for good. So I say 11 years I was in the grips. That takes me to about 27. But like the very last time I know I did it was like just before I fell pregnant with my son, who's now 16. So say 17 years ago. I'm now 50. I, after having been pregnant, having a child, and never thought of it. And if I did think of it, I was always like, my body is this amazing machine. It is so much more than that. My body's this amazing machine. So it hasn't been a thing, right? But I, a couple of years ago, started with a personal trainer who was getting me to track my macros. And this is no shade on her. This is my responsibility and my journey. She was getting me to track macros. So I was going to have enough fat and protein, not too many carbs to build muscle. And I started getting a little bit freaky on it, right? And I found myself, I did that for about a year. And then I found myself like really getting quite controlly about it again and get on the scales a lot and like really, really aware. And like, no, I can't live life. No, I can't do that because I've already had my macros or whatever. And I realized that it is very simple for like something to like trigger like the old thinking again, not because you've slipped or not because you're still in the grips of it or because you're bad or any of that, is because like these old kind of patterns can lay dormant, and certain things can make them go, oh, are we doing this again? Okay, like let's go. I know this. So what I find really inspiring about your story and your books, Kate, is that you haven't written from a place of, I had these problems and now I'm cured and I'm amazing. Do what I did because your life is going to be amazing. You're writing it from this really raw and real place of saying, this is something that I still am
Struggle with.
Yeah, I'm still struggling with it, and I know so much more than I used to. And I can help you to navigate whilst not being, you know, this expert or this perfect example of healing. You're the, I think, wonderful example of in the process of healing.
Yeah.
And your candor about it is great.
Thank you.
You talk about the idea that you write about, your idea of self-worth shouldn't be dependent on how other people see you or see your worth, which sounds really simple. But as someone who spent years in a condition that's all about external measures, how did you build that, or how do you continue to I guess, embed that and embody that belief even while still sort of struggling?
It's hard for me to actually say, I don't care what people think, because I still struggle with
Everybody
that.
cares. Everyone does.
I try very hard not to care,
Yes.
because as someone with a diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder, people will judge, and they have judged over the years. Fortunately, I have a lot of people in my life that know about my diagnosis, but they see the happy, healthy Kate, and that's who they relate to. They don't relate to the label. But I think there's a couple of things that have helped. So actually, when I started working in mental health as a peer worker, I started to see my mental health my health experiences with mental illness as a positive, because it can help other people. So when I reach out now, I don't think so much about, when I talk out now, when I speak, I don't think so much about what people think of me. I want them to get the message of, let's reduce this mental health stigma. Let's look at recovery and let's have some hope for other people. So I don't think so much about what people are thinking of me. I think about the message that I'm trying to send.
Yeah, that's really powerful. That's really powerful, because it just takes the spotlight off you, right? Puts the spotlight out there on them.
It's actually, this week is Schizophrenia Awareness Week. So I actually just put a post on Facebook, a video that I've recorded about schizophrenia and how people need to be more compassionate and empathetic, and not just look at the label of people, but actually see the person underneath. And that always takes a bit of courage, because all these people on Facebook are going to see, the majority of them, I'd say all of them probably know about my experience now because I'm so open book. But it always tests your ability to not care what people think.
And can be hard because, as you say, people can be very judgmental.
100%.
So it is, I suppose, about knowing yourself and loving yourself enough and being compassionate enough with yourself to say, I am so much more than a diagnosis, and I am flawed like everybody else. It's okay.
Yeah.
There is not one perfect person with nothing in their closet, right?
And I'm just very open book about it. Most people are quite private, but I've learned to live in the spotlight, and for whatever,
agree,
whether that's good or bad,
it's good.
I hope that helps other people.
I love that saying that your experiences can be somebody else's guidebook, and that's exactly what you have done. Your first book is called Hope Inc. So when you're talking about hope, your first book is Hope Inc. And you share really openly about your experiences. But here we go, we're holding up. Snap. Your next book is Tell Your Eating Disorder to Fuck Off, Reclaim Your Power. And what I love about this, Kate, is it is actually more than a book, but it's a manifesto. You have little spaces throughout the book for people to have reflection, to do the thinking, to look into their values, to help them to understand their own intrinsic worth beyond their own intrinsic worth and intrinsic values and what's important to them beyond what an eating disorder can look like. And disordered eating doesn't necessarily have to be in hospital for 2 years. Disordered eating is really anyone who gets really controlly over what they eat, and it impacts them living a beautiful, free life, doing the things, eating the things that they love, and enjoying eating with other people, and things like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think you're right. I think I didn't just write this book for the people that are in severe mode of anorexia or bulimia or binge eating disorder. It's not necessarily the people that are severely unwell. It could be for anyone that has eating issues. Basically just takes charge of these issues and kind of goes, okay, let's move forward in whatever way we can, away from this eating disorder crap and towards a life that I love and that I'm excited about and those sorts of things.
If you could say one thing to, say, 15-year-old Kate right now, what would you say to her?
I would say that as 15-year-old Kate, she had lost her sparkle 100%. She had no sparkle. There was no Kate there anymore. It was all eating disorder. I was completely consumed. So I would say to that 15-year-old Kate, who's Kate? Who is she? And what does she want? And what does she enjoy? And what makes her laugh? And what makes her smile? And what makes her sparkle? Because that is the key to overcoming anorexia or an eating disorder, is remembering who you are and remembering your sparkle despite the presence of this demon.
Hey, you're admirable. I thank you for your candor. You really talked about some difficult things today. I didn't know that it's Schizophrenia Awareness Week. So thank you for sharing that. And, I hope that everybody listening to this has learned at least one thing about people who live with this condition. Yeah? What were you going to say?
I will say one other
Please.
thing. I just want to let people know exactly where I'm at in my life at the moment.
Please do.
Right. I like to say my life isn't struggle-free. I still struggle with eating disorder stuff. I still struggle with the mental health stuff. I don't have symptoms, but life is still challenging. But I will say that I've actually climbed a mountain in the last, 2026. So we're talking about 15 years. I have turned my life around. It's like night and day from where I was in 2011. I have amazing friends, an amazing partner that I love very much. And we spend a lot of time at the pub and eat in the sunshine. You know, like I've got a great job and I've got this great publisher, and I couldn't be happier. Despite all the challenges that I still have, I've worked pretty hard to get to the place that I'm at now, and I'm quite proud of that. So I just want people to know that you can legit do that as well.
Yeah.
It just takes a lot of groundwork and persistence and courage, but you can get there.
I love that as a message for anyone going through any big struggles, that it really does just take courage and doing the work, and you can create the life that you desire. You said a moment ago that
100%.
you're proud of yourself, and Kate, I'm proud for you. I'm really proud for you, because it sounds like it's been a hell of a journey, and I love that your life has got all the sparkle back. And yeah, thank you again. It's been great having you
No
on
worries.
Big Stuff.
Kate came on the podcast today and gave us something really rare. Not a recovery story tied up with a nice little bow at the end, but an honest account of what it looks like to keep going when it's still hard. I want to leave you with two things to sit with this week. First, the idea that you are not your diagnosis, your history, or the worst thing that has ever happened to you. Kate has spent years in conditions that tried to become her whole identity, and she has quietly but persistently refused to let that be the whole story. That kind of refusal is a practice, not a moment. Second, at the end, I said that your experience can become somebody else's guidebook. I want you to remember that whatever you've been through, whatever you're still in the middle of, it's not wasted. It's material, it's information, it's wisdom, and it might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Kate's books are Hope, Inc. and Total Eating Disorder to Fuck Off. Links are in the show notes. And if anything that we talked about today has stirred something up for you, please reach out for a professional who specializes in this area. I'll put some support groups in the show notes, because you deserve support that's built for exactly what you're carrying. I'll see you next time.
I hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode of Big Stuff as much as I enjoyed recording it for you. Now, if you did enjoy this episode, it would really help me if you wanted to share it with just one person that you think is going to get something out of it. And also feel free to drop a comment. All of these things really help podcasts to gain more ears, and that's what we're really here for. Also, be sure to subscribe, then you will never miss an episode. If you want to find out more about me, who I am, what I do, then you can go and check me out at daniellecolley.com.au. I'll see you next episode for more Big Stuff.